everyone. Welcome to Deeptech Decoded. We are here today with Shapol from Entangle. We have Neha, who some of you may already know, and myself. With that being said, Neha, Shapol, I'll pass it over to you.
Very good. Thanks, Cameron. Shapol, ready to go.
Yeah, all ready.
Well, awesome. Great to see you again. How about that we hear your own introduction from you for the ones who haven't met you yet?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me. I'm Shapol. I'm the CEO and founder at Entangle. We are focused on helping data centers run all the time to companies, and we're also a YC company. But really good being here.
Super. Actually, normally, I always wonder the personality part, the person behind it. But today, to me, this topic is really sexy. Infrastructure topics are, for me, exciting because this is hardcore engineering issues where they are popping up. And therefore, I'm going to try to channel this as much as to the product, the team, and the company you're building. And then we take it from there, if you feel good with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that.
Oh, awesome. How about that we start with the origin story where the reusable rockets triggered some questions and frustration in your mind, and then you end up, oh my gosh, somebody needs to solve this thing, from a super huge vision to narrowing down, but they're keeping the big picture in mind as well.
Yeah. So I didn't expect to be doing software or data centers. I'll be honest with you. Before this, I was an aerospace engineer, founded this reusable rocket program back in England, and had lots of fun there, launching rockets. And I thought I'd be doing that forever. And during the time, really, I was like, can we create some sort of software to find issues in our designs before we get to launch manufacturing? Because if you find those issues before manufacturing, you save a ton of money preventing manufacturing issues. And then if you find issues before launch, well, that means you have a successful launch. And it was at that time where we had all the Boeing planes pulling out of the sky, and we had aerospace companies reaching out. So we had Embraer, Boeing, and a few others where were interested, and we were like, we'd probably make a company out of this, and we did. And that's when we applied to YC. We got in, and then we moved to the States, and we go through the sales process with these aerospace companies. They like it, and then the final stage is the security, and they're like, okay, show us that you're US citizens. I was like, well, we're not US citizens. And at that point we were like, this is not good. What do we do? But luckily it was at the same time we kept having data center companies reaching out to us. They're like, hey, this seems really interesting. Can we try this out? And then we were like, sure, let's see. At first we didn't really entertain it, but then we were like, okay, let's see what these guys want. And we spoke to them, and it was great from there on. So we switched our focus from aerospace to data centers and critical infrastructure, and that's how we got it.
I still keeping a little piece of you at like, oh my gosh, I still want to go back to the aerospace domain.
I mean, look, data centers are exciting. What's happening today is, it's incredible where all these companies are building the infrastructure to get to AGI and super intelligence. And it's just incredible. I mean, I go to some of these flagship projects where they're building these insane projects, and I'm like, wow, this is, they're building the smartest thing that has ever existed right here. So in that sense, it's very, very exciting. And in fact, the build out for AI infrastructure today as a proportion of US GDP is bigger than the Manhattan Project and the Apollo programs. So it definitely feels like a very, very historic moment, and we play a part in that, a small part in that. But it's very exciting. That said, rocket's always fun. So I go to rocket launches every now and then, but critical infrastructure and AI infrastructure is going it's the present and the future.
What you highlight is a systematic problem. Actually, it's a simple engineering design problem, if I understood it correctly. And then it's kind of applicable to neighbors as well, like depending on which sort of industries you're targeting. And yet you niche down to data centers, which is already complex enough. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like very, very easy peasy. Perhaps we can start thinking on this is an industry at the same time. We are right now joining the club on the peak time, and then where everyone is trying to understand what's going on, how they can improve them, how can they also replace, restructure, or modernize, because the data centers from which stage you tackle, depending on whether when they're building or whether they already exist, and then you try to get into the game. What exactly is the thing you're helping them with? But in a way, your differentiation is so good. Within 12 months, you not only hook them, they advocate for you and for your product. When people change their jobs, they say, hey, I need to have Entangle here. This is a remarkable success. And we're talking about B2B, and we are talking about such highly, how we say, like secure, right, and safe places that it's really like, congratulations, first of all, on this. But then we can try to have us first. What is this differentiation, your secret sauce that you manage to get into their heart of their operating systems, and then you try to, you start putting your roots there and then start growing together with them?
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be a secret sauce if it was a secret. But it's we'll start with the product and how we help these data centers, and we work with a good proportion of the US data center market today. And the ultimate problem that we're solving is efficiency and reliability. So data centers, whenever they're down, they cause mass havoc. So those are two very big ones, one with AWS and the other one with Azure, that caused mass havoc across the world, where you had government agencies not being able to operate, you had many companies not operate, you had people not being able to use their beds with 8 sleep, for example. So that's essentially the problem we're solving. It's reliability for these data centers. And whenever they go,
example of the mattress that they can't down to even that one too, and which is a remarkable product, by the way.
It is a great product. I mean, there's just so many things that depend on this invisible infrastructure that nobody even thinks about. But whenever they go down, and then all of a sudden it comes to everyone's vision, and that's the beauty of it. Like, it just should work in the background all the time and so forth. But about half the time when these data centers go down, it's literally as simple as someone on site turning off the wrong switch. And that's what we try and prevent. We try and direct these engineers to do the right things on the site. And a lot of this happens because in a data center, you have a fairly complex design, and the engineers that are working there, they don't always understand how that design works. So they may turn off a switch and they may not know what happens if they turn it on and what the domino effects of that is. And we essentially can tell the engineers, hey, don't turn off the switch, don't turn off this generator, because if you do, well, your site goes down, because we have access to the entire design of that data center, along with all the asset details and so forth and so on. So it's an AI that has full understanding of your data center, and it basically works with these engineers on site, making sure that they do stuff correctly. And when you tell any data center company, hey, would you want to be twice as reliable in some instances, by just using our product, but it's an instant yes, because their number one KPI is reliability. And whenever they go down, they literally lose millions of dollars. And this happens very often, either on a small scale or on a larger scale, where you may have like a region go down as well. So that's essentially what we do. We help these data centers operate and stay reliable. Yeah, that's.
But actually, when I am thinking about it, so let's try to get one level deeper. So in a sense, Entangle is just coming into my day-to-day life in data centers operations, but also that there are multiple procedures around emergency situations, around the routines, around the way of operating. At some point, I need to find a way as frictionless as possible to bring Entangle up to speed, and I keep it up to speed so that without my manual inputs or feeding, so it's going to be like a shadowing me across all my decisions, all my possible scenarios. If I need to also make a decision that it just say if I need to switch this or that, or if I go through a procedure where I think I can just skip this, but whereas it proactively tells me, no, this is not a good idea, then at that stage, how do you like just onboard me? Let's have a simulation. Like I am your customer. How do you onboard me? And also then how do you make sure that you are kind of blending this human intelligence with your product's intelligence as frictionless as possible and as proactive as possible? Because it's not just a data dashboards and then I'm going there and looking and it's down. No, it's like beyond that, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, no, that's correct. So depending on the site, so there's really two types of site. There's legacy sites, which means it's older, it's an old site, and then you've got newer sites as well. Let's say greenfield sites, which are getting built up right now. And depending on who we onboarded, it's slightly different. But let's start with the harder one, which is a legacy site, as in a site that is older. In those cases, the design data is practically all outdated. So what we do is we send our team out and they look at the site, they update all your schematics, all your drawings, and that's also a nice byproduct to our customers to have their latest design data for that site. And that happens partly because in the data center world, you have your equipment changing constantly. You have NVIDIA releasing new GPUs, so you want to get those new GPUs out to your customers, etc. So that's step one. So we come in, we update all your design documents, and we've seen some horrific design documents where you have ripped schematics, your schematics with coffee stains on them. That's what one part of our IP, to be able to deal with such terrible data and be able to update that. Now, once we've updated that site, we obviously can't, we don't want to come back continuously. What we allow the user to do is whenever they carry out work, let's say you are carrying out work to install new NVIDIA GPUs, right? And as you do that, Entangle is directing you how to do that. It also updates your design documents. Hey, there's these new equipment in the data center. And that happens automatically. Previously, that didn't happen. So you only get your design documents once and they don't get updated. Now with our software, because it's working with you, it understands the entire history of your site, what changed, what didn't change. And you also have that that latest information available to you and your team, which is a very nice thing for our customers.
But I'm really surprised because you're talking about a market that is not like you're the first person ever trying to take care of this. There are already big players like present there. And what surprised me when I try to understand what they are lacking versus your differentiation, I was like, how on the earth you didn't ever tackle this? And I know that AWS, as an example, is also, they also have their in-house solutions that they are trying to improve in ways that they could. But at the same time, it's a little bit of surprising to see how on the earth nobody sit down and then said, hey, this is very outdated way of doing things. Let's just try to make it more intelligent. In a way, it's like, I have a feeling that you are very proactive with every single thing that you do, and your onboarding has a little of consultative approach too. Like, you are not really at the top of your game. Let's try to first set you up for success, and then we will also try to decrease the downtime, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, no, you've understood entirely correctly. So, I think a lot of it, there's two things. Well, firstly, as most data center companies we're prior to right now is to build out more sites, and everybody's trying to build as much compute power as possible. So that's that's their main focus, and we can help them in other ways, which is keeping them reliable. But also the other reason is why we've been able to tackle this, I think, is because we've really been able to think about the problem from first principles. And what I mean by that is, as someone when someone is in the industry for a long time, they start to think that this is how things are always done. And if they want to improve stuff, they have one way of thinking about how you can improve a given situation. So right now, what would happen is, if a company wanted to improve their processes, what they would do is they'd add more paperwork. They'd add more steps into their process. So they'd be like, hey, let's introduce a new document that makes our engineers sign off that they're wearing the right PPE. So they add more and more documents, more and more bureaucracy, because that's how they've thought about things for I don't know how long. Whereas from us, we've come in and we're like thinking about this from a completely different angle, where we haven't been brainwashed in some ways about how things have been done.
And then also usually you guys also have different habits and way of analyzing things.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, entirely. So that's the different habits, different viewpoints to problems that we have as an outsider, I'd say, has helped.
Amazing. But at the same time, there are also, like, when you approach in such big places to say, hey, give me a chance, I'm gonna show you how better you can do, then the obstacles are not only 1, 2, it's like an onion. Like, every time you layer one part of the onion till you go to the core obstacle, right? Like, where you anchor yourself in the company. Did you ever get those hard pushbacks? Like, most of the times, where did the hardest moments came when you try to phase into the company?
I mean, there's always so many challenges throughout the process. So all the way from making first contact with a customer to providing continuous support, there's always going to be stuff that comes up that is challenging. And a lot of the time, when we started out, where nobody knows you, it's always very hard to cold start. And even getting like responses from people, you go out to these big companies and you're like, hey, we can help you, and so forth. They're not always going to listen. And what we would do, for example, is, if someone didn't reply back to our email, we'd send them cake until they responded. Right. So I've got a few emails in my mailbox where people say, hey, stop sending me cake. I'll take your meeting. Start sending me quick. So it's better than continuously like annoying people over email, and it makes them laugh that they keep getting sent cake. Or, I would set up a donut stand outside someone's office. So if I knew there was this particular customer that we can definitely help, what I would do is I'd go outside their office, I'd set up a donut stand between the hours of the 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. That's when typically people will come to the office. And, as they come in, I'm giving out donuts, I'm giving out leaflets, I'm giving them demos. And, as they go in, you have this almost like, I'm talking the office almost. People are like, oh, did you see this guy giving out donuts? He's crazy. And then if the main target is always the executives that I want to grab their attentions. And, if I didn't catch them on their way in, I would find their phone number. I send them a photo of me outside with the donuts. I'd be like, hey, I'm outside giving out donuts. I've given out to all the employees, but I haven't seen you. And then they'd come out, give me a tour. And
you love your tactics, so but also it's very genius. Like, hey, you just need to give me one chance because I know I can help you. Let's just give me one chance. And also you go with an intelligence. You just don't blindly go and randomly give donuts, but do you have some targets actually at the top of your mind?
Yeah, there's a few targets always on my side. It's whenever they finally come out and they say, yeah, we won this, it's always very satisfying. Like, yeah, I've been chasing you for so long. So, the first contact is hard, but we just get over it, and we try and find ways around it. But it's not just the first contact that's hard; it's every single stage that's hard. It's you make first contact and you try and sell to them, and you're trying to go through security and proving to them that you're safe, because as a company, we have access to everything about the data center. Like, there's actually very few people that have as much understanding of a data center as we do, given that we're a third party, and they have to give us access to everything. And so that's a challenge. So security is very important for us. And then after that, you want to go and onboard them, and you have all sorts of different people that you train. You have young people, you have old people, you have people that are educated, people that are less educated, and it's got to work for everyone in some ways. And then from there, you've got to continuously help them run and make sure things are reliable. And it's very fun.
They also have this. I always have a question whenever a new product is presented, right? And then what emotions does it evoke? Like, when I take a look at it, when I start working with it, like, because in the end of the day, we are quite emotional creatures. And then in your product, probably that simplicity and the way that the quick wins, that when you set up already, when you already start, hey, look, I'm already showing you a different way of handling things. Probably these are the, how we say, helping you earn their trust, if I'm not so off with my assumptions.
Yeah, earning their trust is very important, and that takes time. A lot of the time, with these companies, it's not something that they can, allow us to do over one meeting. It's a really continuous process where we try and prove that, yes, everything is good, and we meet their standards and exceed their standards in most cases. So meeting them is one thing, but exceeding them is another thing. But yeah, it just takes time in those cases where you have to win them over. I see a few questions in the chat as well, and
yes, we are gonna get them, get to them. Don't worry. Actually, also, but I was wondering, how did you balance your approach around top down, bottom up? Because in the end of the day, people who are using the software are your real advocates, and then they really need to leverage that. But at the same time, it needs to be visible. It needs to be valuable in the eyes of the people who are not working with them day to day. Even if they have an understanding or they don't have an understanding in the details, but I doubt. So how did you kind of like pull them together into?
So yeah, I mean they're all very important stakeholders. It's just that they have different decisions that they're involved in, and a lot of the time the top down approach works great when people move from one company to another company, and they're like, hey, I really need this thing, because when I had this in my previous company, I was able to, do so much more in my work, and that helps a lot, because you have, they spread the word, and then you reach out to the executive, hey, there's this guy that wants to use your software. He's used it previously at this other big company. You want to try it out, and that builds a lot of trust with them, given that, okay, they have someone internally that has used it, really wants it, and then as well as that, we work with all the other guys as well.
Yeah, actually, if I am not mistaken, you are aiming up to 2 months per year of saving time, right? Like, once they move to Entangle, that, like, if you want to quantify the time in terms of how much time it might help you, other than the efficiency part, it's actually quite a bold.
I would even say the 2 months figure is probably outdated. We do right now. I mean, it's one of the biggest data center projects in the US. We are like doing probably like at least 80% of the work. And that's the flagship one that we're working with, one of the leading AI companies. You may or may not have heard of them. And that's you know, I think a lot of the people that now work on site and they use our platform would probably not be able to do without it any longer. And that's a great thing, because it means that they trust us so much with their work.
What I find fascinating as well, you not only help them to reach their local maximum, but you know all the other players somehow, like, because you're in the sector and you see how their competitors are functioning, and then you kind of offer them a solution on a globally optimized way of doing things. Probably that would be one of the key aspects of the value that you bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can definitely standardize things across your site, which is always very, very useful with us.
Amazing. How about the team? How was it when you started with your co-founder and then you grew the team into a functioning, high-performing? Like, what are the things working, and what are the horror stories that you had? Oh my gosh, okay, we learned out of this, but we won't do this ever again.
So I mean, we have a great team, and each one of them has been recruited in a different way. And the first engineer I met, I reached out to him. He'd won some programming competition in the UK, and I was like, yeah, I want this guy in our team. And I actually reached out to him, and he took like a week or two to respond. I was really disappointed. I was like, he's not really interested. How do I get this guy? And then he joined, and it was great. And he was team member number 1. And then team number 2 was
You didn't send any cakes to him?
have I sent cake? I don't think I've actually sent cakes to him. Maybe I should send him cake. I have sent him NVIDIA GPUs. So
So you know how to talk to people. This is
yeah. So the second guy we recruited was so he was in the rocket program that I started, but not at the same time as I did. So I had moved on to Entangle, and then the person that I had succeeded me, he's a great friend of mine. Like, who's the smartest engineer you have? And he was, there's this guy. And I asked two people. I was like, hey, who do you recommend? And they both said the same person. And then I just texted them. I was like, all right, you're coming with us. So very straightforward. It was like one text. I was like, you're coming? And he was like, yep, I'm in. And that was it. So with him, I didn't even do any interviews. I didn't do any pilots, because he was referred to 2 people that I trust a lot. And when they say this guy's good, I'll take their word for it, especially given that they succeeded me. There was a few others that joined us from there on. But what we have a Navy nuclear engineer in our team right now, and he's great. So if anyone knows any other Navy SEALs, reach out to them. We're recruiting Navy SEALs.
I think they are very famous with their training and the perception and execution skills, right?
They know their stuff. They, if they have something to do, they make sure everything gets done. And the difference between good and great, I tell this to my team all the time, is that, good people, when they come to the end of the day, they have their to-do list, and if they have stuff remaining on the to-do list, they're like, okay, that's it. It's the end of the day. I'm gonna come back tomorrow and continue my to-do. Whereas great people are like, no, it's not end of the day until I finish everything on my to-do list. Navy SEALs are great because they're like, I'm gonna finish this no matter what. I'm gonna make sure everything is done.
There's a reason to use this soldier mode. I don't know. At home we use it a lot. Like, it's soldier mode now, but like it doesn't make it. If we are in the mood, if we are sharp, no, pull that through.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say soldier mode from now on. I think I like that.
Yeah, probably. This is great. But then how do you guys run? Let's take a look into the way. Tell me.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say about the team before I move on. One thing that's, I think, pretty unique about the Entangle culture is that we've got a no firing culture. So when people hear this, sometimes they're like, "Whoa, what? You don't fire?" I see so many founders on like LinkedIn and Twitter brag about how many people they've sacked. It seems like they really like that. And to me, when I look at the best, for example, investors, they never give up on their companies that they've invested in, right? They always like through thick and thin, they're with them no matter what. Think about Founders Fund or Y Combinator, for example, right? And terrible investors, for example, they'll be with you at the high point, but as soon as you do bad, they'll forget about you and they're like, this guy's whatever. In the same way for us, it's like, if we accept someone, we're gonna, keep this guy no matter what. And we would rather torture them into greatness than give up on them. And that's a very, very important thing about the culture. We have looking out for each other as opposed to, assigning blame, because now you've got a very risk-free environment where, if something goes wrong, people will take accountability, learn from it, because there's no firing up. And the only thing that you can do is improve. And that's a very important thing. But at the same time, it means getting into the company is very hard, because if we accept someone, we really want to make sure that this person meets our caliber, because we know that this decision is practically irreversible. And that's a very unique thing about the company, because I want everybody to feel like they can take risks, do stuff, make mistakes, take accountability, and move on from it.
This I have never ever come across, like, since so many years. Never heard a company that have no firing culture.
I mean, it's similar to investors. Like, for example, Founders Fund says they will never ever vote against the founder on the board, right? So you have lots of investors, and when they take board seats, they fire founders, and then that practically never ever works out, right? In the same way, when Founders Fund first said, "Oh, we're not going to fire founders," everybody was like, "Wow, this is crazy! You need to have like accountability, you need to have all this." But actually, it has the opposite effect. It just means that people are going to work harder. They're going to be more motivated. They're not going to be scared. They're going to be willing to take risks and more importantly, take accountability for mistakes. If something goes wrong, they're not afraid of saying, "Oh, actually, I made a mistake." Because if you want to improve, you actually need to take accountability for those mistakes. And as a team, I think that's very important for us. If someone gets something wrong, that's fine, as long as they improve and we torture each other into greatness.
Actually, that is a very, very smart way of approaching it, because you rather invest all your time and energy to make sure you let the right people in and be part of the team. It's like, actually, it's also very rare that in the army that you get fired. Like, you get into the various roles, unless you do ethical wrongs, if I'm not right.
Yeah. The two instances where I do say I will fire. One of them is if someone has lied or like misled us. And the second one is if someone plays politics. We have a strict no politics culture in the company. And by that, I mean, things like favoritism, things like socializing ideas before a decision is made. Another thing that's big about our company is that we have 100% transparency. That means no one has private conversations. You can see anyone's conversations, there's no Slack DMs. Everything goes through our public channels. You can request any email, you can request anything. And that's very important. So there's nothing, anyone can know anything about the company at any point, whether that's about me, whether that's how much I earn, whether that's what I do and with other customers, or how different team members interact with each other. All of that is visible, and that's another great thing about the company.
I think by doing so, you already eliminate a couple of root causes to dysfunctional teams, right? Like, sometimes even not intentionally, those things happen that you don't mean in that way. But then, how they say this, you kind of set mechanisms internally in the company that only empowers and enables people forward. And then you trust their own judgment, so that this information is available. There's nothing hidden. Like, if you want to know something down to my salary and your peer's salary, in this way, everyone also, this trust feeling goes beyond trust, I guess. And they feel committed in a very, engaged way.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's how you create high-performing teams. It's like, you have that, if you join, like, if you like feel like in the military, you need to have trust in your team members and your teammates. And in a similar way, here, everybody can trust each other and take each other's words for it. And there's no risks for taking risks in the company. That's very important.
Actually, the biggest risk is not to take risk, especially right years.
The biggest risk is not taking risks. From my previous experience when I led the rocket program, what I saw, we started out very small, obviously, and then we got to 6 people, 12 people, 25, 50, 75, all of a sudden we were 100. And things go so fast between when you're 6 people to 100 at that point. We created teams, so we had people who were like overseeing, the electronics, some people were overseeing the structure of the rocket. And what I saw was people became a bit territorial, right? If someone was in structures, if they were in response to the structure of the rocket, they were like, they didn't want other people dealing with that. And if something went wrong, they'd be like, oh, it's because the electronics guys haven't done that, right? And this is why I'm very serious about having a no politics environment in the company, where I'm like, we are all one team. So if something is not getting done, you also have to take accountability for that and get it done, right? I don't want that territorial aspect within the company. Like, oh, I'm responsible for this customer, I don't care about this other customer. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter, because we're all one team, and we have to make sure we look out for each other and make sure things get done, and we really torture each other into greatness.
Yeah, this reminded me of Jensen Huang's saying that he also aims to, let's say, build the team culture and functions around a very simple, but at the same time quite demanding, intellectual demanding. I think the challenges are always human problems. We don't have tech problem. We don't have code problem. I have never seen a situation where we entered to solve a problem for a manufacturing company, or let's say a B2B SaaS solution, and then we just couldn't write the code. Like, that was never the case. It's always like the communication or different understanding of the same problem, or as you say, politics. Somebody wants to cling to their chair, and they feel insecure. They don't want to open it up and show how things are not actually working well. It's a very refreshing perspective. I feel very, how to say?
Yeah.
Yes, because there are not so many people like you out there.
What I really aspire to. One of them is Jensen. Jensen's great. Another one is Warren Buffett. And Jensen, for his way of leading a team. So if you look in NVIDIA, it's a very flat hierarchy. In fact, on the NVIDIA investment committee, so if you want to get NVIDIA to invest in your company, there's 3 people on the investment committee. It's the CFO, it's one other person, and Jensen Huang. So Jensen Huang writes every single check pretty much at NVIDIA himself. It's a very, very flat company. Everyone knows what's happening. And that's something that we have similarities to as well. The other person I really like is Warren Buffett, for his just understandings of business fundamentals. Today, I see so many AI companies that, and excuse my language, do a lot of bullshit. Like they run on hype, and the VC money gets to their head. They think because they're VC backed, or they're an AI company, or they're an R&D company, or whatever it is, the basic fundamentals of business don't apply to them, right? There's so many companies out there that still don't understand that you've got to make more money than you spend over any time period. If you're an R&D company, your time horizon is much longer. You may be looking at a 10-year time span where you're like, in a 10 years time span, I'm going to be making more than I spent. That's rule number 1. It doesn't matter whether you're software or hardware or R&D, AI, not AI, VC or not VC, right? And the second thing is, the best companies have got lots of pricing power, and they can, the customers like them so much that they're willing to pay practically anything to use their services. And I tell my team, we shouldn't be tempted by all these other AI companies today that do lots of hype marketing, lots of fake stuff, and they spend like huge amounts of money on stuff that is just pointless. And I'm like, let's stay focused on what matters, and the fundamentals of business apply to us regardless of anything. So I always try and be cash flow positive, even as a startup, but also always have at least 2 years of cash in the bank even if we get no revenue. Those are two very important financials that we have in the company. And yeah, we are still growing incredibly fast because we understand that the fundamentals of business still apply to us. And we don't do bullshit hype marketing and stuff.
No, actually, I kind of feel always hopeful when for example, before we met, I was looking around all the information out there, but sort of also marketing you guys also executed. I admire it when people fully focus on the problem space and the people who have this, because then they have the enough motivation and capabilities to go into that. But then insights don't come from the hype. The insights mostly come from really focusing and heads down, understand the human being who has a problem in that big company, and then trying to co-design a solution together. Like this is also kind of sign of focus at the same time for me. Not they didn't get this marketing piece yet. No, there are so many founders. I'm just surprised how much budgets are going into marketing activities and the time, or without nailing down the core, they start thinking about go to market. Well, everything comes down to your differentiation and what you offer to the person as a value. If you don't focus there, then you will focus on the motions rather than the right steps that are gonna generate you the value. You know what I mean? Not like the very intentional way of looking at the whole dynamics, but rather, let's say, social media cheering zone, like cheer zone on social media.
Yeah, I mean, entirely. That's how things should be.
Amazing. I am drawn into the conversation, I realize, and all the questions are popping on my mind. But at the same time, I also know we can start already asking what questions we have, and then maybe Cameron can show up and then help us to lead the conversation.
Awesome. It's been a really enlightening conversation so far, and I must say, personally, I didn't expect to take as much learning about building high-performing teams from the conversation as I have, and that's a great compliment to yourself. As someone who has spent a lot of time in organizations who are very monolithic, I can understand a lot of the pain points that you kind of called out earlier on, particularly within, the financial services and insurance type space. So with that being the case, there are a few questions that came through as people registered for the event. So one of those was, and I feel like you've answered it to a degree already, but how do you sell into the data center operators, and how did you overcome those security concerns that they had first off? And then secondly, other questions that kind of preface the event were, what differentiates you from the hyperscalers? And again, I know you sort of touched on that in terms of their focus is elsewhere and kind of skewed towards growth at the moment. But if you could perhaps can answer and expand on those, and then we'll go through to the questions that will come in throughout the chat.
Yeah, I mean, security is always big, and with security, we basically have a very serious and rigorous process in place with lots of controls. So we're like audited with multiple frameworks, with multiple auditors, and we have the basic stuff like encryption, arrest, and transit. And we have some more serious stuff, especially when you're dealing with, like, for example, government data, and that's like a whole level of different security that you need for them. And then essentially when it comes to security, it's just the playbook's very simple. Just make sure you have all the right controls, the right security controls in place. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of your energy and bandwidth across the company to make sure things are compliant. But you just basically have to make sure they're there. And there's like a list of 500 or so controls that we have in place across the company, with reliability internally, whether it's a security, whether it's incident response planning. So we do incident response planning at least once every quarter. By that I mean, we as a company come in and we say, okay, if there was someone who was, I don't know, there was some ransomware attack on the company, how do we respond to that? Do we give them the money? Do we not give them the money? Etc. So we act those stuff out as well. And then we do monthly penetration tests. So we have a third party that comes in, and we have different levels of penetration tests across all of our customer platforms. We make sure that things are secure and continuously secure for our customers. It's a lot of things, but it's just that it takes time, and we prioritize that over anything else.
Absolutely. And I guess a personal question I had as well was, again, this is probably fueled by my history in larger financial services companies. And it's one of the things that sounds like you've combated very well at your own kind of organizational level, which is the politics and protectioneering that you get within silos. So when you're going into a customer, how do you overcome where maybe you've got the ear of the CISO or the CTO, but you're trying to avoid, maybe you're not trying to avoid, but how do you overcome the internal conversation around maybe they haven't been doing the job that they need to be doing in terms of the DC ops within an organization?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I deal with these companies, it's actually, there's, whenever I deal with big enterprises, there's always like a very different culture to what we have internally. You can almost always see the politics that play within a company, within an external company. I've had some horror stories with politics in other companies where we've like served them. I've seen like 2 executives literally having like fights right in front of me about, oh, this is what we've been doing, things wrong or not. And you can see that, they have, for example, a terrible culture. And a lot of the time, when I'm dealing with that in external companies, it's a lot of the time it's just ego. And you've got to understand that, the person that's causing the racket at that external company, and then when they're fighting internally within themselves, it's just got to overcome their ego problems and make sure that they both understand that they're both correct. But yeah, I mean, you have all these, you have this terrible culture in these other big enterprises at times, and we've just got to deal with it and understand that it is how it is.
Awesome. So what I will do is I will start opening up the chat to people who have sent questions through. So first off, hoping this will go smoothly, is we'll reach out to Khalid. If you want to, you should have the ability to essentially ring in, and Nika will allow you into the chat, and then you can speak to Shapol and ask your questions directly, and we'll kind of work through the questions. Outside of that, I think from Khalid, he's kind of seen some parallels in digital assets now in AI, around a lot of the kind of noise and BS. I guess a question I would have developing off that is, when you have some of the larger agreements happening in the space where there are questions around how those are being funded, and it sometimes looks like creative accounting is a bad word, but potentially complex in their kind of financial structure. How do you, when it can be easy to see people gaining leverage, trust, growth, financial success from putting out that information, how do you kind of combat that internally, I guess, from making sure that you're committed to the principles that you've kind of set out so far in terms of the kind of having a really clear business foundation, and those good basics that you talked about throughout the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I am not, I don't have any specific details on, I guess, the bigger deals with the bigger companies that are happening. And I don't know who would be for me to, I guess, comment on whether or not I think it's going to happen in that case. But, I tell my team always is not to be tempted with the BS that a lot of startups do, where they, forget the main focus of the company, which is to bring in money and bring in money profitably, at least at a gross profit level. And if you want to spend more or burn more, when you know that every dollar you spend in sales and marketing converts into, let's say, $2 in revenue, that may be one case where it would make sense. But I always tell them, look, as a company, we have to make more money than we spend over a time period. That could be over a year, that could be over a quarter, that could be over 10 years. But we have to remember that, that's rule number one, right? Every dollar that we spend, we have to understand that there will be some return to it over some time frame. And then obviously the other things come into play as well, where in order to win, you have to build that trust with your customers, that you don't do bad stuff. And there's really good stories around other YC companies. For example, Coinbase, when FTX was around and a few others were around, a lot of their investors were asking Brian Armstrong, hey, your competitors are growing so much faster. Look, they're like cutting corners here and there. Why don't we do it? And he was like, no. Let's play the integrity game here. Let's do things properly. Let's follow the basic fundamentals of business still apply to us. And, Coinbase today is still around. And I think it's either the biggest or the second biggest YC company. So in the long run, understanding those basic principles and having high integrity always wins over everything else. And even if there's someone else that has some sort of advantage in the short term, we shouldn't be tempted by it just because, if the fundamentals are wrong, it's wrong.
And in my head, at least, the flat structure and lack of politics and kind of the radical candor that is bred through your organizational culture would at least kind of help that as well, because you're not having these kind of gray areas or cracks that things can fall into, and people can perhaps kind of, I guess, move outside of that culture. So again, that's just a kind of point I'd say to, it seems like you're doing a fantastic job in terms of kind of building and driving those high performance teams. So thank you for that answer. I will go to Tobias.
Okay, yeah. First of all, pleasure to have you in the call, and just want to get a bit of an understanding in terms of the scope, what you are doing. So I understood that you are basically focusing on a bit like the engineering design phase. Please correct me if it's not the correct understanding, or as well as more focused on the actual operations phase. And then it's basically if there is specific trades or parts of the data center in this respect, what you are focusing on. So there's obviously multiple, right? There's the IT itself, there's cooling, there's whatever, equipment security, all these kinds of things. Certain parts you already addressed, so maybe you can say a few words around that one.
If I understood your question correctly, it was like, do I have a few points on the other parts of data centers?
Yeah, it's really about like whether you include all parts or as whether you are focusing on a few parts here.
We focus all the way from the power that comes to the data center all the way to the racks. So that includes your power systems, whether it's your main energy that's being supplied or your generators on site. In some cases, you're seeing even gas stations being created on site. We help them in those areas as well. And then you have the mechanical systems where you have your cooling, and you can either have air-cooled data centers or liquid-cooled data centers. The newer ones, you have lots of liquid cooling that are way more complex than air-cooled systems, and downtime is much more critical in those instances. When you have your liquid cooling go down, it's pretty critical to the site, and you can take it down your data center in some cases. And then obviously the power feeds into your racks and your servers and so forth, and that requires a level of operations there as well, a level of design there with your networking, with your servers, so forth and so on. And that's another area we help address in order to make sure that these sites reliably operate based on their design data.
I mean, the second question was around a bit like who is actually that you are selling to. So if there is multiple parties that are, so to say, involved in this, so is it like the later operator, like the one that is building? Is it like, because I mean, you have to obviously convince all the different parties, right, to be involved here. How does that work?
There's really two main types of companies that we sell to. It's the owners, and then there's the operators. In some cases, that's a single company. So in a lot of the hyperscale cases, they are the owners and the operators of that site. in some cases, especially when it comes to like private equity companies, think Blackstone, KKR, etc., they own the data centers, but they may not necessarily operate them. In those cases, we would sell to two different companies, or we would get buy-in from both companies before we proceed. And the sales is slightly different in both cases. But essentially, there's those two routes that we can go down.
There are a lot of, I would say, persuasion needed and like a discussion with the owner operator, with the many parties that are involved. Then how is it handled? Are you like approaching them, or is it like that your customer is basically saying, no, we are choosing you, and basically this is given, you all have to work together?
It's a mixture of both. We always do some outbound ourselves and meet these companies. As a company, we always want that. If we can do that, we should do it because it means more revenue. But now, as we're becoming more of a player in the industry, there's a lot more companies reaching out to us and say, "Hey, we've heard about you guys from X, and this company or this person, and we were intrigued. We want to find out more. Can we roll this out into a site?" But yeah, that proportion is growing slowly in our case.
Thanks.
All right, I'm just going through to see if we have any more questions that are going to pop in that haven't kind of potentially already been answered by some of the conversation that we've had so far.
Hi there. Am I on?
You are. So, Gabriel, we'll run with your question now, and then in fact, I've noticed you're typing in the chat, so we'll ask that afterwards. Perfect.
Great. Okay. So, hi, Shapol. First off, thanks for being here. Really awesome stories to hear. So thanks for that, and congrats on everything. So my first question is just kind of on the HR company side. I took a look at your careers page and saw a few interesting policies. So first off, I saw something interesting that you basically say that y'all will vet talent and come to a decision in just 3 to 6 days. I presume that's maybe from the time that you meet them in person for the weekend interview, right?
We're pretty quick in making the decision. In fact, two of the people that we recruited in like less than 5 minutes. I had a phone call with them, and I was like, "That's it. We want to go ahead with it." The way I approach decision is that if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. If it's a maybe, if it's like, oh, this could be good, it's a no. And in the hell yeah cases, it's very obvious that this person is a hell yeah. So to answer your question directly, when does that time begin? It's from that very first call that I have with them. So as soon as they make that call, they apply, I read the application, and in the application, I was asked for 2 videos to be sent through. A 60-second video showing the most impressive thing that they built, and a 60-second video introducing themselves. I watched that. And then if we like it, we give them a call on their phone. It takes 10 minutes. And in fact, that's how YC makes their decisions. They ask you to submit a video, you send the video along with the application. They have a 10-minute call with you. And if they like you, they accept you. There's no other things going on. And I don't see why you need more than 10 minutes. If anyone's a maybe, you can filter them out in those 10 minutes. And then if they're a hell yeah, you can very quickly proceed. And that's the kind of talent we want, I guess, in the company.
That's interesting. It's very insightful. As far as, sending over something that they've built, I presume that's just for technical hires, right? On non-technical hires, is it slightly different?
I mean, on non-technical hires, I always ask them, let's say we're hiring a salesperson. It's like, what was the most creative sale that you ever had? There's lots of salespeople that can think that sales is just emails and phone calls, but they don't really think about anything else. So I asked them about that. I asked them about their quota. They still watched that 6-second video introducing themselves, and then really make the decision from there.
Cool. Clearly, I'm not a salesperson, so I didn't even think of that. But cool. So the other thing I saw is that you're very explicit with saying that you guys do not believe in work-life balance, right?
I don't believe in work-life balance because I think, if you're gonna do anything, you should enjoy it, and it should be like something that you want to do. But the culture that we really have internally, what we call it is work wherever, work whenever. That, I tell my team, I don't care where you work, when you work. I don't need you to be in the office at 9 a.m. Just get the work done. And we say that because I see in a lot of companies where they measure activity as opposed to measuring output. I see there's a big thing happening in San Francisco now where people are saying we have a 9-9-6 culture, which means working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. To me, that's very stupid. Because you're measuring activity, how long someone's in an office. I'm like, I don't care. Just get stuff done and exceed expectations. We're all good. That's the kind of people that we want. And the people that we recruit in our company is people that we trust, right? As, the founder of the company, I don't need to watch over people and be like, oh, are you working or not? I should just be able to trust them that they're going to get stuff done because they're like a rocket ship. And that's what we really mean about that is that I don't care where you work, when you work, whether it's 3 a.m., whether it's 2 a.m., whether it's 9 a.m., 2 p.m., it doesn't bother me. And personally, the reason why I became a founder is because I can't do a 9 to 5, or I can't do a specific work schedule. I like to get coffee at 10 a.m., go down to the coffee shop, go to a walk, call home, and see how my family is doing. But I still work at 11 p.m. I still work at 10 p.m. I still work pretty much every minute of that I'm up. And essentially, I want to give that same freedom to my team where they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, but just get stuff done. And that highlights the thing that we're after. The thing that we're after is outcomes, not activity. I see especially in big enterprises, people measure how many emails they sent, how many meetings they had. And a lot of the time when I'm interacting with these big companies, you can very obviously see when someone sends they schedule an email for 7 a.m. on a Saturday or something. They might have been up at 7 a.m. because I can respond to them at 7:01 and be like, hey, I've got it, because I'm very quick with my replies most of the time. And they take 2 days to respond, which is very obvious that email was scheduled. And it creates this fake work culture. And to me, we don't want that here. And we trust our team. Do whatever you want, whenever you want. Just get stuff done. But by the way, this doesn't mean you have to be remote. We still are very big on in-person interactions. It just means you have the freedom to just do whatever you want and make sure things get done.
Okay, so I must have missed that on the careers page, but it sounds like in reality, it's actually very balanced, that you actually do afford a lot of freedom. I'm sure, as you said, it's outcomes are required, but beyond that, go ahead.
It's not a chill culture. That's something I want to be specific about. It's a flexible work culture. As a founder, for example, myself, I'm very flexible in terms of when I work, where I work. It doesn't mean I don't work hard. It just means I'm entirely flexible around when I work. And that's the same, I guess, luxury that my team has as well, is that, they expect you to work hard. And, I tell everybody, you've got to work hard and smart. But, when you do it, I don't care. Or how you do it, I don't care. It's just the outputs that matter here.
Well, that's cool. I think that's great. Let me see. Okay, so that sort of acts as one of my other questions. I guess the only last question I have is, I don't know how much you can talk about it, but you mentioned with me how a little bit about the secret sauce and how I don't know what you said, wouldn't be secret if you shared it or something like that. But I guess how do I understand, I think, maintaining operators like I don't know, Blackstone, these types of players that maybe are not deeply technical as organizations, or at least not as technical as the hyperscalers. But somebody like Amazon or Google, how do you think about maintaining them as clients going into the future? Because they have armies of engineers, and they obviously took it upon themselves to create these massive cloud computing and data center platforms. And so, you mentioned making sure that people don't turn off the wrong switch, right? But I'm thinking, there must be some, very interesting technical things that you guys are doing in order to get and keep those clients into the future. So, anything else that you can share on that?
There's I mean, there's a few things here. For them, the number one thing right now is expansion and top line and revenue and so forth. So all of their resources are going out to, okay, how can we build more sites? And having a partner like us, take care of other stuff for them is very useful. And we do it at the end of the day more efficiently for them because we have a product that's built. If they were to start, they would spend tens of millions of dollars on it and 2 years to get the product up, right? Or they can just use our product and get value out of it right away. Now, the question you ask is, okay, but how do you maintain them? So, okay, you won them over, but how do you maintain them? So let's say in 2 years' time, in parallel to this, they're also developing a tool of their own internally. What is it? Why would they not switch over in 2 years? And there's a few reasons. Number one, we've locked them in by contracts, so that's one thing. But as well as that, the hyperscalers are really our partners as opposed to competitors. And in the industry, if you were to have a company that operates these data centers, you would want someone that's neutral. So, for example, like let's take Oracle. Oracle has a lot of their computing power used, in data centers owned by Blackstone. And those same data centers, you also have Microsoft right next door. Now, the company that operates that site has to be neutral. You will never have a Microsoft software operating an Oracle infrastructure, or you'll never have Oracle infrastructure operating Microsoft infrastructure. And the same way you won't have, AWS having them both. And that's a very important thing. They're very, they take security very seriously. And that's where we come in as a third party to help them out both.
Thanks for the insights there. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. That's it for me.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Awesome. And then I believe we have Afak who is going to be let into the call.
My question is, you might have been following this development about data centers in space, and I'm wondering if such a thing becomes a reality, what are the technology challenges that you foresee? And for instance, to convince a person like you who's been working on ground-based data centers for a while, what are the technologies that you would want to see demonstrated before you trust something like that? Putting the data in space, operating out of space, orchestrating large data volume transfers over space. What are the key technologies that you think would be necessary to be demonstrated before you move, for instance, one of the data center from ground?
I got the question. So this question was around data centers in space and what do I think the challenges are around that. So there's very few people who actually have experience with data centers in space. So I'm like, small subset of people that actually have experience with both. And I would say, firstly, I know Philip from StarCloud. So he was in the same YC batch as me, in the same group, same partner as well. And I was actually one of the people that referred to him. So, I believe in the idea, but that's, the idea is challenging, and all great things are challenging to begin with. And, there's lots of people that talk about cooling problems or so forth and so on. But, to me, it's an inevitability that you are going to have data centers in space at some point in time. And, you're going to need, for example, robotics on site to be able to maintain that data center. Right now you have people turning off switches, stuff and so on, but you're going to need like an automated system that can do that for you. You're going to need creative cooling methods, and you're going to need falling launch costs. Now, I think all of those can be done, right? You can have the cooling, you can have falling launch costs, and you can have the robotics sometime in the future. And if there was anyone that could do this, it'd be Philip, because Philip is actually an incredible founder. So I always say this, I say it's a very challenging problem, but if anyone can actually make this happen, it's StarCloud and Philip, because I know how crazy driven he is. And that's it. All the three problems that I highlighted are problems that have solutions, and you can solve it. And there's lots of things when it comes to aerospace. There's lots of things that people have thought of as stupid at the start. There was lots of people that thought SpaceX was stupid. There's lots of people that thought supersonic planes were stupid, and they were all wrong. And you see that same cycle in hardware, where a hardware company comes out, everybody says this is not going to happen for whatever reason, and the founders work away for a few years, and then they make it happen, and all of a sudden everybody forgets that they were against the idea from day one, and they're like, oh yeah, of course SpaceX is great. SpaceX has always been great, but it wasn't always like that. So I say, right now there's lots of people that criticize the idea, and I can probably say that they're wrong. And it's going to happen. You're going to have data centers in space at some point, and I'm rooting for Team StarCloud. So that's what I'd say.
There might be other players who might finally make it happen, so watch out for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be big companies that come in and do stuff, and we've seen from David and Goliath, it doesn't always mean that they'll win. And the most driven people normally win, in my opinion. And I think StarCloud is a great team.
Couldn't agree more. It was very enlightening to speak to Philip a few weeks back. So very singular in his drive, like you said. And I think you need that when you're... I know Moonshot is kind of, sounds somewhat like I don't mean that in sort of like the idiomatic way it may come across in reference to what he's doing. But what I will do is, I know we're getting towards the end of time and a few people having to step out of the lobby. So I will ask for Nihal to be brought back in, and we can do some closing questions and closing remarks. And just from my side, it's been really interesting to hear you breathe a lot of joy and excitement into a topic that, when it's something I've approached in the past, has felt quite dry, if I'm being entirely honest. And personally, I've learned a lot from you today. I like to think that most of the people that were able to join the call have too, and then also those that will be able to share this with moving forward. And I'll pass back to Nihal. But thank you very much, Shapol.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Actually, I have a few questions, if you don't mind, Shapol. It's always like I always continue to pose my questions before we say goodbye.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Awesome. Amazing. Because in terms of the execution within the team and also towards your customers, you have this also genuine way of connecting with people. Therefore, I was just going to ask, what are the things, the hard lessons? Because not everything is always smooth, right? Like probably on the way, there were some rainy days too. So I want to little bit understand one of those, show us a little bit of those rainy days, not the sunny part. And what happened there? What were the really key lessons that you yourself were surprised?
Rainy days. Let me think of some. I mean, there's definitely been lots of challenging moments in the company's history. Some, I'll tell you one. I mean, for example, during YC, where when we started, we were in the aerospace industry, and that meant that we had to go through the processes and basically we weren't producing any results for like so long in the batch, and again increasingly frustrating that our revenue was practically zero. It was very, very little for I don't know how long it was, 6 weeks or something, or 8 weeks, and every week I'd come back in and speak to our YC partner and be like, "Yep, we are in the same place." it was very, very, very very frustrating. Tom, our YC partner, is very good at keeping us focused in terms of the stuff that actually matters and revenue and so forth. And for 6 to 8 weeks. It was very, very difficult and painful, and it was like nothing's working. You see other people, getting results, especially during YC, where think things are very hard. And then we got our first customers, and that was that was exciting. And then things from there went very, very smoothly. So I'd say the cold start was very very anxiety inducing, but nothing that we couldn't come over. And I think most of the problems are like that. I mean, I just like to think about things now in a very particular way. I imagine like as if I'm in a video game, and I see a map, and I see all these data centers on the map, and I've got my team, and I've got my investors, and I can almost imagine the map where I'm trying to take over data centers on the map, and it's like playing Clash of Clans or Forge of Empires almost, and I just focus on what matters. It's like, how can I get one extra data center? And in the game, I can almost simulate my team. I'm like, okay, this guy is on PTO this week, he's not going to be available, so he's inactive. This data center is getting angry, or this data center is not responding to me. What do? We send them cake. And when you think about it that way, it's basically a game, and it's actually really, really fun. It's really addictive when you think about it that way. Lots of people are addicted to Clash of Clans and Forge of Empires, and you run into problems there, but I don't stress about them as much, because to me it's like, oh well, it's just a game. I can just get another data center. If I can't get that data center, I'm gonna get that data center. If I can't get to that person, well, I'm gonna get to the other person. Yeah, that's what I would say.
And eventually that they will come to me, perhaps, because there's sometimes when you go after I'm a fan of going after the big logos at the beginning, because these people are giving the immediate credibility. Once you have one, then the other looks, oh, you work with them? I want to work with you too. So like really human psychology 101. So simple. And at the same time, they have enough resources that they can also help you to sustain yourself on the runway. So you don't get into such detailed negotiations around even the way that the POC runs and all. But regarding the days that when you went into your partner's check-in on the office hours, and the same, this is also the same, but at the same, it must have given you somewhere some sort of resilience at the same time, because this shall pass, but I just don't know what to do right now. But then your pivot came at a moment that was right after the demo day.
No, it's before demo day. So we got everything in time for demo day. What's this fantastic?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in fact, by demo day, we were like, we don't want to raise anymore. So it was a great ton of events. So we definitely had tough times at the beginning, and it was good stuff that we learned from.
How would your life be different if you were to try to pull this off in the UK? If you haven't been to YC, it's a little bit a hypothetical question, but I'm just trying to, because you have built something in the UK, and now you're building something in the US with this amazing ecosystem of YC.
Yeah, I mean the UK is a great country, and I mean I grew up there, so I'm thankful for a lot of things that the UK provides. But I would say when it comes to the startup scene, it is nowhere near as good as the US. In fact, like I think there is, in generally speaking, outside of the US, it's not a UK problem only. It could be the rest of Europe. It could be, I don't know, Canada. Most people, when they come across the ideas of companies, they're just aware of big companies, and they're like, oh, these big companies have always been around, and they'll always be the big companies, and so forth. Whereas when you're in Silicon Valley, you literally see all these billboards for startups. You see people building companies, and it's like, oh yeah, it is possible. You have that belief, you have that culture that yes, things are possible. It's a very different culture to, let's say, anywhere else on the planet. And I think that's the biggest difference. Like whenever I try to sell to European companies or British companies or any other geographic region, they see you as a startup and they're like, do we buy from startups? But is it going to work? Whereas in the US, you can literally speak to the CEO of the biggest company on the planet, and they'll take you seriously. Like in our case, it was Andy Jassy from Amazon. Right? He was going to take us seriously, and this would never happen in any other part of the world, unless it was, the US, and that's something that the US does very well. It's like, the startup culture is second to none, and the UK and the rest of the world can definitely improve, but it's a different mindset.
But also regarding your and you encountered with him, but also there's a fact that YC kind of helps you manufacture your luck, because at the same time that makes you visible in the right audience for the right people, and also there is some sort of the default trust, his team is capable. Let's just try to see what they are doing. Perhaps, and do you want to little bit have us go back, rewind back, and then see your conversation? How was it? Also for you, and then the culture in Amazon is also quite unique in a sense that innovation internally, people can come up with their own startup, and then you just then launch it as a product name, and then you put it out. It's a very unique and encouraging way. Like, you need to have really good reasons to say no if you don't want to pursue a solution. How is your connection with them?
Yeah, no, Amazon is a really good company. To my team, I say there's really 3 great companies out there that are big today. It's Apple, it's American Express, and AWS. And the thing I like most about AWS is the democratic side of things. Like the fact that anybody can, let's say, create AI products within Amazon and use it. That's a very important thing to drive innovation. And you can really see when you interact with a person from Amazon that they work so differently to everyone else, and the principles that Amazon and Jeff Bezos laid out within Amazon are so key to their success. And some people love it, some people don't do very well on Amazon because it's just not a fit for them. But the team are, when it comes to tech and data centers, there's no one that does it better than them.
Then I'm gonna just try to wrap up with the future. How do you see like Entangle? Like, what is your grand vision moving forward?
Well, the first thing I tell my team is let's take it one step at a time. Stay focused on today. There's lots of things that can happen. We have to execute well today in order to be able to do stuff tomorrow. But the thing, the vision, which we very rarely talk about publicly and internally, actually, is that we essentially want to run the world's critical infrastructure, right? That's not just data centers. That's the electric grid. That's nuclear plants. That's semiconductor manufacturing, and do it better than anyone else. And when those layers of critical infrastructure go down, the world stops. Whether it's airports, whether it's data centers, and we want to be that company that runs all of that.
Wow, that is quite a how to say bold vision at the same time. But also, if you take a look into as an outsider, when I try to understand, it's all transferable skill sets and solutions that you apply, right? Like, and once you figure out an domain, then you can also move to the other domain, because in the end, you always tackle the engineering design problems as a very overly simplified way.
Yeah, I mean, it's for example, data centers that we deal with today, and a lot of data centers that we deal with, they have like a power plant right next door that they're also building, or a nuclear plant or a solar plant, and we serve them as well. And to us, you can expand that into many areas of infrastructure. But right now, we say, we're focused on the thing at hand today. We have to do well today in order to be able to even dream about tomorrow. So we're pragmatic in that sense. Let's do well today, and then tomorrow we'll think about what's next.
Awesome. All right. So, Shapol, we have something. We have a question for you from our previous guest. And I just will read it to you, and let's see what your answer would be. I think you can guess who was that person. It's coming from Brandon Severin.
That is a great. He's a great friend of mine. I mean, honestly, I don't think I will say this. I don't think I would have been able to do what I've done without Brandon. There's been lots of hard times in the company, which I know you asked me about hard times, but there's been really hard times in the company that honestly, I wouldn't have been able to do without Brandon. I've had, we go on a walk with a coffee in hand, and Brandon is amazing.
Brad mesmerized all of us, I guess. Like, he's a superhuman being at the same time, so smart and humble and reflective. Amazing. Very happy for you. You have such a great close friend. So Brandon, this question is the following. When does it hurt the most? And what keeps you going? Council coming back to the rainy days again, huh?
When does it hurt? It's it hurts the most when there's things that you can't. There's times where you're like, there's this thing is going on, and at first it may seem like it's not in our control, and then I go back to this, the thing that Paul Graham says about Sam Altman. And there's a very famous essay about that Paul Graham wrote. It's like top 5 founders, and in that list he's got the founder of Sony, I believe, is some Japanese founder that inspired Steve Jobs. Number 2 was Steve Jobs. Number 3 was Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Number 4 was Paul Buchheit, the founder of Gmail, and number 5 was Sam Altman. And at the time he had written this, Sam Altman was like 19 years old or something, like super young. He was some nobody. So when I met, when I met Paul Graham, I was like, I really want to ask him this question. And I'd ask this around YC every time whenever I meet a partner, I'd be like, why has he put Sam Altman there? What did he see in Sam Altman when he was 19 years old to put him in the same ranks as Steve Jobs and Larry Page and all these other guys? And I was never able to get a satisfactory answer until I met Paul Graham himself. I was like, you got to tell me this. What is it? And he was like, well, he told me a few stories about Sam Altman, but the thing that really stood out was that if you put Sam Altman on an island by himself, and he's with a group of and that's actually in his essay as well, and he's with with cannibals on that island, come back in 5 years, he'll be king. And that really keeps me going. It's like, if Sam Altman can survive that, then why can I not do it? So I think that's something that keeps me going. I'm like, hey, how can I get this done, even if it's not in my control, even if I'm stranded on an island and I'm surrounded by cannibals, how do I still come out of this? And I mean, I just keep going. And I also the second thing is I also keep going thanks to great friends that I have through YC, and Brandon's one of them that keeps me going.
Actually, this was such a beautiful conversation, and having spoken with both of you, I could see that how the let's say brotherhood is kind of connected with one another. Shapol, it was a pure joy and pleasure having you here today. I had so much fun, and I also learned a lot from you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and for being here.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Bye.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shapol. Bye-bye.